Hi friends, it's Lauren Taylor. Thanks for joining me in my craft room today. I'm grateful to have you here for a Christmas card video. I am moving my series to the 24th of the month instead of the 25th, and I'll talk about that a little later, but let's talk about what I have on my desk. So I have printed out part of volume 12 of the emergency card kits from Sassy's LLC. I do not have a color printer right now, so I decided to take my hand at printing on pattern paper some of the really cool elements of the bonus part of volume 12, and that is some of the images that Sassy's LLC Sarah Liz has given in that bonus 12. So I printed out the sheet where you would trim everything down to be 2 3/4 by 3 3/4. And I printed the ho 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 sentiment that says on the left, "Time to feed the man who breaks and enters," which I think is hilarious. And I did that on some blue pattern paper from the holiday 6x8 patterned paper or pattern cardstock paper pad from scrapbook.com. So I printed it on the lighter of the snowflake paper, just printed it directly on there. If you'd like to see a video on how I printed on pattern paper, let me know in the comments down below. And then I also printed out that tree image twice, once on just white cardstock and then once on the pink pattern paper, so I could do a little paper piecing. So I really wanted to bring in some of the really cool elements that Sarah Liz puts in her kits, but since I don't have a color printer, we're just going to make do with what we have. So I am grabbing some alcohol markers and I'm doing very, very simple coloring, just like one color for the tree. I almost said branch. That's not the branch. The tree trunk. Took me a minute to think of what that was called. And once I was done coloring in the tree trunk and the star on the tree, I'm grabbing some Minty Fresh Simon Hurley ink and using a blending brush just to add a soft color of blue onto this panel. And then I'm going to grab fake plant and a piece of low tack tape, mint tape from scrapbook.com, and I'm just going to grab my green blending brush and I masked off just so a teeny tiny bit, not even a quarter of an inch on the bottom where the grass would be or the ground that my tree is going to be standing on in some green, and that just gives it a little bit of grounding. I'm using the image from Sassy's LLC to guide where I'm coloring, but that way it just gives a little bit of more of a grounding look. And then I fussy cut out on the line to do paper piecing the tree out of that pink pattern paper. So now I'm going to add glue, make sure it goes all the way to the edges of all of those little pokey parts of my tree, and I'm going to layer that right onto this little panel. So my tree is now from pink pattern paper. For my panel here, I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer. I like that the image itself has some of those black kind of splatter speckling thing going on, so I'm going to add a little more by using some gold watercolor and some white splatter. This is a bleed-proof paint. So I'm going to get my little white ready, and I'm going to start first with the gold splatter just by adding water to my watercolor palette here. And I'm going to splatter that on with a paintbrush, just like a fine paintbrush. I'm going to edit into the, after I add the gold, I'm going to add the white, but before I add the white, I do take a cloth and just kind of dab up the excess water from the gold, and then I splatter on the white. And I will set that aside to dry while I clean up my desk and get all this paint out of the way. Now for my layering, I'm following the sketch from the Kit 12. The sketches are from the original, I think back in 2023. I'll have Sarah Liz's video link down below where you can get the kit itself. If you are a member of our Patreon, you can get these like little panels. This is part of the extended kit, and I'll have that linked in my supply list. So if you are a member, you can get the extended bonus images and sentiments. If you are not a subscriber to her Patreon, I have her Patreon link down below. I do have a code if you want to use my name, Lauren, Lauren, as the code. You can save 10% off your first month as a Patreon member if it's a new membership. Or if you want to pay for a year just up front, you can save 10% as well. So you'll save even more if you want a year full of access to all of Sarah Liz's amazing sentiments and images and sketches and everything. So I have those linked down below if that is of interest to you. But you can get her original sentiments from Kit 12 down in her video. So I have that linked down below as well. So I am just following the sketch. This is the third sketch out of the 3 in her original Kit 12. The only thing that is part of the bonus are these paneled sentiments and paneled images that I'm using on my cards today. You can get the circle sentiments, which I will bring in for my Christmas tree in just a little bit, with the free membership, or I think just even on the original video. So I'm, again, following the sketch. I cut these down to follow her sketch, which is like 1 inch by 4 1/4, but I cut them down to 1 inch and then just trimmed off the extra on these gray panels. Sarah Liz does a lot of pastel gray on her cards, and I always like the look, so I'm trying to embody Sarah Liz and use a soft gray background instead of a white background like I normally do for my cards. I do want to add some strips. I measured these smallest strips. These are the slim strips, or I think they're called the long strips now, from scrapbook.com, and I brought in a bolder pattern paper this time. The thick strip on the left is such a pastel pink. I wanted something a little bit bolder to pop off of them more, so I brought in this star pattern paper from the same paper pad, and I die cut it with the small small strips, and these measure about, I think, 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to glue 2 of them onto each card. I added a little bit of liquid glue behind these thin strips, and I'm doing my best to make sure they looked spaced and even on this 1 inch strip on the card. I'm going to repeat this for the other card, and once I get both strips down, I'm just going to trim them down. Once the glue is like hopefully a little dry and they won't move anywhere, then I have that little design on the left from Sarah Liz's sketch. Now it's time to start putting things together onto my card base. So I'm going to start with picking out my sentiment. I already have a sentiment for this Ho 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 card because it's that whole panel. But for my tree, I wanted a Merry Christmas sentiment. So I'm going to go with the top right sentiment. I have my hole puncher here. This one is from Stampin' Up because my mom's a demo and I needed this punch because I wanted to be able to punch out my sentiments just like Sarah Liz. So I will have Stampin' Up link down below if you're interested in ordering from my mom, but you can just get a typical 1 3/4 inch hole punch from most online shops, or brick and mortar stores. I didn't really like the just edge of this white circle on my card, so I first started with just adding a little bit of green. I'm just using the leftover ink on my blending brush to see if that would help. But then I noticed that because I printed on the more textured side of my white cardstock, I meant to print it on the smooth side. I think it, like when I ran the blending brush over some of the letters, some of the ink wiped off. So I just grabbed a black pen and went over any areas that I needed to darken up the sentiment. But I still felt like it was too like white edged. I wanted a little something. So I'm grabbing my circle dies from scrapbook.com, and I die cut one of the sizes that would fit perfectly with my nested, 1 3/4 circle on it. And I glued that to the center. Now I know emergency card kits, you're supposed to use repositionable tape, but I'm just going for it. I like the sentiment for this card, so I'm gluing it down. I'm going to pop up my panels. So I'm using some foam adhesive behind the panels that will be on the right side of the card, and I'm going to go ahead and glue those in place. So I peeled off the release paper. I'm going to use my little T-square ruler here to try to make it as even as possible. I did a 1/2 inch on the left and I'm going to do a 1/2 inch on the right, again following the sketch, and I'm placing that onto my card front. I'm going to add some foam adhesive behind my circle sentiment as well, just on the back side of the left side of my circle, and I'm going to use liquid adhesive for the right as it will overlap with my paneled image on the right. So once I get the glue on there, I'm going to line it up. Now I wanted it to overlap. The original sketch just has it over the sentiment, or not sentiment, I keep calling them sentiment strips, over the strips on the left, but I wanted it to overlap with my panel just a little bit. And then I repeat the process for my other card. This time I know it's not going to overlap as much because I don't want my sentiment to be, covered by my circle. So I'm not going to put it over to the right as much. I'm just going to have it overlap a little bit with that circle background that I'm going to use to kind of frame my image. So now my card fronts are pretty much put together. Again, just using all of the images from Kit 12, the extended edition from Sarah Liz, Sassy's LLC, and I followed her sketch number 3. But for this last one, I wanted to put an image of Santa to go with my large sentiment. So I'm grabbing my Happy Santa stamp set from Pretty Pink Posh, and I stamped my little Santa on some alcohol marker friendly white cardstock, and I'm going to punch it out with my same hole punch because I know it will nest perfectly in that circle. I used Ohuhu art markers to color them in. I just did really quick coloring. I didn't leave it in today's video because I wanted to focus more on the emergency card kit rather than my stamped image here. But I just did some basic coloring using reds, grays, and dark grays, or almost black, and some, whatever skin tone you want for your Santa to put in that image. I am grabbing some card bases, just folding them in half here, and I'm adding my panels to the front of the card bases. My Ho 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 card is done, but I did notice that I accidentally smudged some of my splatter on my Merry Christmas card. So I'm going to grab my Pops of Color. This is a glitter one in the color Champagne, and I'm adding 3 to the card, covering up my one little splatter that I did not like. I tapped the back to dome them out, and here's a final look at my cards. Here you can see this cute Santa card, and then I printed on that pattern paper my little image of Santa on the left. I think it was really cute and fun. Here is my tree, so you can see my paper piece tree that again I printed on pattern paper, and my sentiment on the left. Let me know which of the two do you like. I feel like my tree is just a very clean, classical Christmas card, even though it's in some non-traditional colors. And then we have the sassy little Santa card. I love Sarah Liz's sassy sentiments, so I think each one is great on their own. Let me know which one you would prefer to get in the mail for Christmas. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you'll click like, and if you're new here, I hope you'll subscribe and come back. As always, you can find everything I use down below in the description box. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye!